Well, hello, Natasha.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too.
Thank you for joining me straight after your set, your show.
Of course.
Well, what can I say? You're amazing.
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed the show.
It's really sweet.
Before we start, I've got a little tradition with this that's just came about kind of naturally.
Okay.
If you don't mind joining me, what I do is a little clap.
Yes.
Basically, I go 3, 2, 1 and clap, and then we begin.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's great.
So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Now we're in. I don't know why I'm doing it sometimes, but it just happens. So
like
Natasha, like your show, brutally honest,
Yes.
which I really enjoyed. I particularly enjoyed the honesty from you. I particularly enjoyed the truthful moments in the stand-up. I enjoyed towards the end there the story of your grandparents, and I could see the emotion there, but yet there was still the humour. Tell me a little bit about that, how that comes about, how you can share yourself like that in front of an audience.
You know, I mean, I've always been as vulnerable as I can be on stage with respect to the stories that I'm telling. You know, even when I'd originally started working on this hour after releasing my last special, and it takes so much time, you know, especially when you're crafting a thorough story like that and how you want to relay everything back to each other. The first time I had written the joke about my ex-boyfriend passing away, I did it at a show in Chicago, just first time, and it crushed, but it was in a room full of comics, and I knew that it was probably too dark for most people. And I was like, there's so many connections here, though, of how this can fit into the story of my past, and that's when I started to articulate it and craft it in a way that would make it more palatable for people, and what the lesson is there.
Why do you have to do that? Why do you have to make it sit well with others?
In my heart, like I couldn't let it live on as this brutal commentary of somebody else's passing away.
Okay.
You know, because I feel like that is spiritually negative.
Yeah.
The comedy, I don't mind. I think you should say whatever you want to say, as long as it's funny or has, you know, the proper message. But for me, you know, putting that out into the universe, because his family was lovely, and we spoke after that happened, and it was, to me, it was a devastating thing not because I hadn't been through hell with that person, but because you do hope that they get better. And so I was like, for me, I just wanted to craft that into something that I could say that would make it resonate a little bit differently than just a mean joke.
So where did the joke come from originally, that you saw something that was a bit dark and you was like, there's humour there, and I can offer something within that? Where does that come from?
So my best moments come from real conversations I'm having with my friends.
Okay.
I was at brunch with
Which you mentioned in the show as well, how
Yes.
like you're super honest with your friends, and your friends are super honest
Yes,
back.
I don't tell people other people's business, and what I do on stage, I think I do pretty respectfully, especially if I'm talking about other people. That joke came from brunch with my friend Nicole in Los Angeles. We were brunching before either her or I had to fly out, and I mentioned that I had just on that trip found out about my ex-fiance and ex-best friend getting married, and 2 days before finding out that my ex had passed. And we both at the same time were like, that is a fucked up reincarnation. And like, so she actually made it into a funnier joke. And I was like, okay, how can I turn this into my voice? But yeah, it was her that inspired that joke. A lot of my friends inspire my jokes. Actual things.
Why do you think your friends are so honest with you then? Is it because they know that you're a comedian and that you can make light of things?
Yes. Yeah, and it's I can't write about somebody else's perspective or experience, right? Unless I find a tie into my own life somehow, or unless it comes up organically where I get to then use that because I'm the one with this craft and they're not. So anytime I'm in like a writer's block, I usually even just take a couple weeks off from shows and go hang with my friends, because they're the inspiration, my real conversations with people. Because when you think of, even when you're writing like a script, when you want to like write something that flows well, conversations, you know, the more real they feel, the more it resonates with people.
And that's what's happening with this, that I'm having like these open, honest conversations where we're just me and you sitting here right now having a chat, and it just flows naturally. Whereas when I do stuff like, people are starting to ask my opinions on things. When I'm coming to this, everyone's like, oh, can you write a review for me? And I'm trying my best to do that, but I feel it doesn't quite work quite so well, because there's something blocking the natural flow of things.
Yes. Yeah.
So how are you finding, how are you keeping that natural flow? You said like about you got that period of time where you take time off. Mm-hmm. Is that how you find it?
Yeah, I mean, the natural flow, for me, even putting this hour together, it's all pieces of stuff I've been doing for a while. But when I was thoughtfully putting it together as an hour for Fringe, that's where I had to find the interconnectedness between it all. And, most comics know, unless you're headlining every day, which, in major cities like LA and Chicago, a lot of times you're just doing like 20-minute spots here and there, 15-minute spots here and there.
An hour's quite a tough gig to pull off.
It is.
It's you up there having a one-person conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that I can't imagine what that's like.
It's great. Usually if I'm touring, even before this, you're going to comedy clubs, people expect to come in and laugh, and you hit things a little bit differently. With the Fringe, some days, like yesterday was a sellout, today was really light. Yeah. You have to be able to still have people be entertained, even if they're like on the way to a play next and just came from a dance show, and the disparity of what they're seeing throughout the day is so big.
And that it's Sunday. Sunday lunchtime in the UK is quite a chilled time.
Yes.
We'll have a roast in the UK. I don't know what it's like in America, but we'll sit down, have a roast,
barbecue, a couple punch drinks,
and that's kind of like, I think we're in the flow of that. So to go into an environment like that where you're doing stand up, the energy of the room is already kind of set at a low chilled level.
Yep.
So how do you push through with that?
So the pacing is really important, right? When I depending on the day, some of my shows have been landing like 54 minutes, some have been landing an hour and 3 minutes, and that really depends on how much vibrance I'm getting out of the room, really. It's you kind of notice that ebb and flow, so it's really important for me to pace myself, even if it's slow.
Well, that felt paced today. That felt really nicely paced. I've been in different types of comedy rooms where the atmosphere is different, where everyone's laughing really loud, and it's driving the performer, the stand-up. Today, like you said, it was a small audience, so it's a little bit quieter with the laughter, wasn't it? But I was still enticed by you. That's why I said to you, first of all, when I met you straight away, I was like, you're amazing. Because I was really enticed by that. I wasn't in that atmosphere of laugh out loud, funny, like complete energy. But the room has a lot to do with that, doesn't it?
Well, and it's when you're presenting something, it's meant to be comedy, but it's also heavy storytelling. So whether or not the room is energetic like that, I still am thinking about how can I make this so they're just focused on what I'm saying. I appreciate that.
And I was.
Even in like bigger comedy clubs, where there's hundreds of people, there are still those moments where you want people kind of hanging on so that a pop or a laugh or a joke or a punchline lands different. I'm not designed as the comic that's like punchline. I totally love comics like that, but I'm story, so I'm grab attention, pop,
And I enjoyed the story, and I really felt, like I said about the moment of your telling the story about your grandparents, and the little bits building up to that. You had the comedy moments where you told one or two little jokes about your nan building up to that, but when you gave the real heartfelt moment of like how they, their meet cute and their separation as well, that was really powerful, and I could see the emotion in you as well, which was really, I want to say really nice, but I felt connected with you at that moment.
Thank you. It's like every time I tell that, I didn't expect it to be emotional, but I did the same thing in my last special. I kind of geared up to this like little emotional piece at the end, but there was a joke layered in it, so it immediately cut that tension for me and for the audience. Is she gonna cry? No, but I also really, when I tell that story and I relate it back to their life, because my grandpa is gone. The first time I talked about that on stage was right after he passed, and it was at this beautiful place called the Green Mill in Chicago, and he used to play there. So I swear I could feel his presence there when I was talking about it. And I feel like when I talk about people, like they're here, and that's why I don't want to even talk about negative things about people that have passed. I don't want to stir up.
That energy is still resonating, isn't it? I felt the same with my grandparents.
Yeah.
Especially my granddad. I had a strong connection with him. I think grandparents give you something different to what parents give you. They can give you a different kind of love, and they can give you something that your parents are there all the time trying to make sure you're safe, but they can have you for a moment and offer you something different. From my grandparents, I just got nothing, pure love.
Yeah.
That's the only way
exactly.
I can describe it.
Exactly.
And I've got my granddad's ring in my pocket every day.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
And I feel like he's still with me. That pure love is still there, resonating.
Yeah.
And I think that's what connected me to you as well. Was I could sense that you got something similar from your grandparents.
Very much so. My grandmas are my heart. My grandma Mo is, she's been a part of my comedy work for a long time. And I've also tried to, she's very intuitive and like very in touch spirituality and with her spirituality with God. And she will get these words. And years ago she had said she was always supposed to be in the background. She always knew in her life, she was married to a musician. She was always supposed to be secondary. And I knew it was part of my calling to like bring her to the foreground. Maybe not, her face and all this stuff, but like her story, I feel like everybody's got a story, and it would be selfish of me to just think that it's just my story that matters. I think there's just so much more to tell there. And with my grandpa, but right before he passed, we had a heart-to-heart over beers, and he always really understood my path because he was an artist too, and he made it work. He made it work and had his ups and downs in his career, and he was so encouraging in that way. And, and that's why too, when I get to perform and get to talk about him, I always want to paint him in that good light too, because he did have a destructive past, but he wasn't that man when I was born, and I think that's admirable.
So how did your granddad encourage you to follow your path then? What is it that he sort of said to you? What is it he gave you that made you be able to do this? Because it's tough what you're doing. Being a stand-up comedian, you're gonna have some highs, but you're gonna have some lows as well.
There's a lot of it.
And then being a creative, it's a hard life to pursue because there's normal jobs and there's normal things in life that we want that can be hard to attain through being a creative. So how did they encourage you to do this?
I have this quote written down. I don't want to butcher it, but the kind of thing he said to me really closely before he passed was to be an artist and to find a way to make a living off of something you're called to do, something a lot of people are afraid of doing. And to be able to do that is a superpower. And if you can do that until you die, that's how you want to meet the good Lord. And I was just like, then he passed, and that kind of just resonated with me a lot, because I was like, at least, by the end of our life, what did we do? What did we accomplish? What did we put out there? And what kind of risks did we take? I think you don't want to die with regrets. And so I at least knew that he didn't do that. He'd made things right and done the thing he wanted to do.
And this is really interesting because I'm having kind of that moment now myself of I've been doing this for a year now, pretty much a year exactly, and I've thrown everything into it this year because I feel like it's my calling, my purpose. I feel like I'm doing the thing that everything that happened before was leading up to this.
Right.
Everything makes sense for me from having an accidental overdose of marijuana.
Yeah.
And that was a big turning point for me. And it was really interesting to hear you bring that story up because that was the turning point for me.
Yeah.
Was that accidental overdose. I did not know you could go so high.
And that was the most severe one I've ever had on something.
So did that do something to you? Did that make any change in you? Because I've looked into it since, and scientifically, there's rewiring of the brain that can happen on these chemicals. But I went to a spiritual place, and I went on a journey that kick-started this journey. So did something similar happen?
Yeah, actually, after that experience is when I tried mushrooms for the first time, which I think I cut that joke out today just because I was running short on time. But my friends took me to Big Bear. I was recovering from, my breakup still. That was a long year. Everything was shut down too, so I didn't have this cathartic release of stand-up. I just was like, sitting alone dealing with it. They all took me to Big Bear, and we did mushrooms for the first time.
Sorry, what's Big Bear?
It's in California. It's like a place people go from LA to retreat a lot. It's like woods. There's these big cabins, log cabins. And I fell in love with mushrooms. I'd never done like a ton where I'm tripping, but I really did find the power in them as this like natural.
So I've not gone anywhere else with, I'd not really done any drugs previously apart from marijuana, and even then it's only kind of been quite light.
Yeah.
But for me, at the moment, I don't feel the need to do anything more. But why did you find mushrooms beneficial then?
It was just really eye-opening. I remember sitting the first time doing them and just kind of looking out in the woods and like, you know, I have a joke about my friend's toddler waking up and just being like, wow, how is he walking? His head is so large, you know, just funny things like that. But you end up having this, you feel this connection to everything, and it twists it. I'm actually writing a TV show about this right now, but it kind of twisted my perspective as to everything that I was looking at that I talk about in this that was like feeling like it was a harm or a detriment to me. It wasn't necessarily. Like it happened, but it didn't happen to me. It just happened, you know. And the way that they probably tell that story in their life moving on is much different than my perspective. And so it's interesting to see things from somebody else's perspective. It's almost like a paradigm shift. Like everyone's
kind of like took you out of your consciousness to review, almost to like review it.
Yeah. And it like everyone writes their own story because it helps them navigate their life and the things that they've experienced, right? So whatever story you decide to tell yourself, that's how you survive traumas, right? So I've been choosing to tell myself a good story about everything that I've experienced that even is negative. You know, how can I flip this for myself so I can make it a healing process rather than I'm carrying this fucking baggage around, you know, because it gets really heavy if you do.
Yeah, and it was for me, it got really heavy, really, really heavy. I always, whenever I talk about this, I always put like a little like warning on it that for me, the thing that happened to me that night is I went to a really dark place first. I went to hell first.
Yeah.
I was going to kill myself.
Wow.
So I always say to people, if you're going to try this, like it's not all sunshine and roses and it's going to be perfect. I had to call my dad in the middle of the night and say, I've done too many drugs. I'm going to kill myself, because that was the only thought that was going around in my mind, and I knew my dad was the only person that would protect me through that. I knew that there was no one else that could
talk you off that ledge.
Or not even talk me off that ledge. I knew that if my dad needed to knock me out, he would.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
He would sort of, whereas if I called my mum that I know loves me, she'd just worry, or do you know, or I just knew there was no one else that would do what's needed to be done that night.
Yeah.
But after I'd been to hell, that things got better. And for me, the way that it happened for me is I met my guide, and I went on a journey of what has been before and what could potentially be next, and reviewing what do I want to do next. Like, we don't actually have to do anything. Like, we can just be still and do nothing, or we can have an impact. And that had that kind of, I could talk about this for like 100 years, everything that happened that night. But did you find that there was a choice for you afterwards to make?
You know, I felt like in that kind of same ball of experience, you know, I don't continue to do mushrooms, not that I wouldn't, but I think for me, it started hitting that I'm supposed to use my comedy and my startup to help people. You know, with comedy, you get to release like this pent up something in people that they get to laugh about it. But then there's more work I wanted to do beyond that with my startup that would help people over the course of a healing journey. You know, I started seeing kind of these pieces come together, kind of like you mentioned, like things were starting to make sense, like forming. You know, you spend so much of your career having to hustle that I think you can get past an opportunity almost. You're working so hard without allowing things to happen as they should. And that time in my life, and, you know, the lockdown and everything kind of just slowed everything down and made me think, okay, I can work hard, but I can also relax a little bit and allow things to play out the way that they're supposed to. It's almost like being in a car versus walking down the street. You know, you're in a car, you get to your destination faster, but you miss all that beautiful stuff on the way. Or if you're walking down a street, you might just take a little detour.
Yeah, and I've been doing that here.
Yes.
I've been doing that in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
I've been discovering the city. I've been walking around, and if I feel like there's a sense for me to turn left, I'll just go left. I'll just go
Same.
go with the flow. But I've adapted that to life as well. That I'm not. Before, I was forcing things. I was trying to be an actor. And I was actor, and like, I must get this part, I must do this, I must work with these people, I must be here. And it was force, and it never worked out for me. Nothing worked out for me. Whereas now I'm going with the flow, everything's falling into place, and falling into place so nicely. I feel like life is good because of that.
Yeah. The allowing stuff, you know, I wake up in the morning and I read certain things to myself that I've journaled, like my intentions for what I have, my intentions for the festival, for the week, for the month, you know, goals that I have, but I just read them out loud to myself. Because I find, you know, same thing, I was on the actor slog really heavily in LA for 11 years. But the process of auditioning and then not hearing back and auditioning and not hearing back, it doesn't mean I don't want that part of my life. But the second that I let go of that is hard, I started getting just straight offers for stuff because I have a business and I'm a comedian. I got offered a TV show straight from a casting director to host, and it was like a comedian's commentary perspective on businesses that failed. You know, like some cool things have come up where I'm like, I'm putting this out in the world that I still want this, but in the way that I was going about it before was unmanageable.
It was wrong. And I know quite a few young actors, and I find it quite hard to tell them about this change in perspective. That they're not kind of like, I don't think that they're necessarily understanding because they're still pushing and pushing and pushing. But yeah, for me, it changed when I stopped pushing, not just on a sense of me wanting a career, but going to the spiritual thing. That the day that I said I'm giving up, I was on a walk with my sister, and I said, I'm giving up. I'm not doing acting anymore. I'm done. 20 years of fighting, of rejection. I'm done. That day, I get a random email from a friend of a friend saying they saw me in a show 10 years ago. Am I available next week?
Right.
That day.
Yeah.
And that was through That was through someone seeing me 10 years previous in a show. How did that happen? How did that, through me just saying no more, I'm free.
Releasing, you know, when you release stuff, I mean, it's a weird thing to say when you've had, like I said, to hustle for so long, but you've already put all this work in the world. You've already started rolling all these boulders down the hill, right?
Yeah.
So they're still in motion. It's like the work didn't go away, because a lot of the best things that have happened to me have happened 9-10 years later as well. You know, there's anything that you intend to do and that's meant for you in your life, I really do believe it is going to happen. And once you kind of release yourself of that need for it to happen in a certain way, you'd be surprised what kind of works out.
So is the hustle important then? That we do that hustle, that we do put the effort in, but then later release. That maybe where I'm maybe being a bit preachy to some of these younger actors and being like, stop trying so hard. Maybe they need that.
Yeah.
Maybe they do need to go through that and
think
to
so.
have that moment of release for it to then to come back.
It took me years of overdoing it with the stuff on my plate, constantly being worried about, you know, how many emails and follow-ups I was doing. I mean, people know me as a hustler.
Yeah.
I still am.
And it can be good and enjoyable to be a hustler, can't it? It can be, you can get a sense of achievement from it, can't you?
Yep.
But then you can also get that sense of I'm not getting overwhelmed, and burnout.
Burnout, yeah. I'm more intentional about it now. Like, I know when I have to get things done, and they get done. But some days I'm like, maybe I don't feel like doing this thing I had on my plate for that day, and I give myself the freedom to go explore something else that day.
Yeah.
You know, there's a little bit of more of a balance that I'm continuing to find between, you know, put the work in, but also just allow things to take shape. And I think that's really powerful.
So a question for me then that you can maybe help me with. I'm in this environment, the Fringe, and I'm trying to make the most of this opportunity. So I came here with quite a plan and so many things that I wanted to do. And I'm just not finding the time to do everything I wanted to do. And with my old self, I would have been very frustrated, which I'm not frustrated. But how do I continue to go with the flow of this?
You know, I think if you put it out that for yourself that you want to just run into the right people and end up at the right shows, right place, right time, that happens. I mean, it's really weird.
And
but
with you waiting by the door just now.
Yeah.
I was like, when you left, I was like, oh, I'm not going to catch Natasha. Maybe I'll send her a message later. And then I turned around and you were just there.
Right. I mean, those kind of things just happen. You know, if you make yourself available, this is a busy festival. I think you'll continue to just meet and find the right people to interview. And, you know, whatever you get to, great. There was more things I wanted to do here too, like on the street interviews with people. I've gotten a few, but I haven't edited them all yet. It all takes time.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna edit every night.
Yeah.
You know, and I was gonna be, and then I was like, and then the other night it was like 2 a.m. and I was like, how am I gonna do this? Because then I can't do tomorrow.
Yep, I was thinking about it too. I'm like, I want to put up clips of my show, you know, but then other things come up and I'm like, you know, relax about it. Enjoy the present. You'll find the time, you'll find the inspiration to do the thing you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. I'm done with that, like over exhausting myself with what I should be doing rather than just doing what I'm doing.
I guess that comes back to like about over worrying about the audience. You know, like if we are just working on just putting the stuff out there again and again and again, that's putting your energy in something else other than what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm meant to be doing this right here, right now, asking you some questions, finding out about you, and sharing parts of your journey, not worrying about the audience and what they might want or might not want, or just doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, it's really cool that you're doing this and getting people's stories, and you're getting to share a piece of yourself in that too, which is really cool.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
You know, you find these connections with people. That's what I miss about my podcast. I can't wait to release a new one because I would have these heart-to-hearts with comedians I'd known for a long time, and I'd find out these things about them that I was like, to totally change my perspective on how they operate and who they are and why they're the way they are.
These kind of conversations bring out an honesty, don't they? They bring out a new side of people.
Yeah.
Again, going back to when I was acting, I wasn't ever being myself. I wasn't ever me. I always felt like I had to put on a mask. And I wouldn't ever done anything like this, being an interview, because I was like, right, okay, I'm Martin the actor and I've got to do my pronunciation and, you know, I wasn't being me. And so it wasn't working for me.
Right.
And again, that's what I really loved about seeing you doing your show. I honestly felt like I was getting to know Natasha when I watched
appreciate that.
I really felt like it. Like, I don't know you,
You're right.
but I feel like I do. And that's such a special gift to be able to give to the audience.
I feel like that's, originally I was going to come do Fringe in 2020. After I just released my first special, I was writing this kind of memoir called Diary of a Bad Fiancé, and I created this whole online persona of this character that was helping me cope with the long process of the breakup between the wedding being canceled and the actual breakup. And I was kind of relieved when Fringe was called off that year, not for, you know, the artists and the people involved, but for me it just felt like the wrong piece to put up because I didn't feel aligned at that time with an alter ego of myself. I felt aligned with being myself. And so I really appreciate hearing that because I did work this new hour into making sure I'm sharing more of myself, that you can almost watch my hours in subsequential order and like see the timeline happening. And that's kind of what I want to continue
This reminds me of everything happens at the right moment, at the right time. You know, like you had an idea about doing something in a certain way, but maybe that idea wasn't meant for you.
Yeah.
Isn't the thing for you. The thing for you is to find yourself and be able to share yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you feel like that?
Yes. And I feel like as I continue to grow and shape as a person, you know, the next hour, who knows what that'll look like. You know, there's more things I've experienced since I wrote this one. I try to keep everything pretty topical to my own life and, you know, kind of fill in the gaps for people. There's something to relate to in everybody's journey. You know, and usually after a show, there's at least a couple of people that'll come up to me, even if it's just one, but that'll, you know, mention something about their grandma or mention something about their ex experience or going through a divorce or going through abuse or going through loss. You know, it's just, we're human. We all experience these kinds of things in different forms. And I think that is the really fun part of being able to put on a show like this and just see that connection. And we're all not that different, you know? We're all pretty special in our own way.
Yeah. And that really resonates with me, because one of the heavy things that I had previously in my life, I had someone say to me something once that, when someone says something that is wrong and you know it's wrong, you feel it's wrong, but it weighs on you. Mm-hmm. Someone said to me, people aren't special. Like, there's so many of us. You all think you're special, but that's your egos. And it really made me like kind of go, oh shit, like maybe I just have, like, my grandparents told me I was special, but maybe I've just got an ego, and maybe they were lying, maybe they were just trying to be nice. Yeah. And I was like, fuck. But in doing this, I'm like, everyone I meet, every conversation that I have with someone, I'm like, there's something really special about you. You've really got something to offer the world, and every single person is different. And I'm like, I knew that person was wrong when they said it to me, and now I'm having that confirmed.
Yes, I agree. I think everybody does have something very significant. Whatever path they choose to follow, and again, that goes back to wanting the best for people, even if they've done bad things. I do feel like there's so many people that I admire who've turned their life around completely because they had a bad past. Some of the best, like, not even gurus, but like, podcasters and things I listen to, people that are spiritual, written amazing books, have amazing consulting businesses, and like help people through these journeys themselves, have been through the worst of the worst. And, at times I'm sure they thought they weren't special, they had nothing to offer the world, but you can flip that on a dime. You can really take anything that's negatively impacted you or that you've done to negatively impact other people and make that a positive.
And is that what you're doing with your business?
Yes.
With your business, sorry, I forget what it was
called. My Breakup
now.
Registry.
Breakup Registry, yeah. So is that what you're trying to do there? You're trying to take something that was negative and flip it to a positive?
Yep. I was originally, it was kind of more of a kitschy thing originally, where I had been through the breakup, not divorce, but canceled wedding, and was like, oh, people need stuff. This is kind of fun to have them be able to register for things like a wedding, but if they're not getting married.
But like when people have a baby, or when people are celebrating times that are genuinely good anyway, we enhance that, don't we? We celebrate it more and more. But when someone's having a bad time, that's actually when they need it most. Yeah. That's actually when they need the energy, when they need things to be flipped around. Yeah,
and the support comes in a lot of different ways. And so I brought in a co-founder last year. She had formerly had an alcohol addiction, and I started having conversations much like these, but not for the public eye, with people that had been using the registry, that follow me on social media, that had been through traumas. And I found this big through line that people, when they're going through something really epically hard, they get a lot of support right away, but then it dwindles, and even I talked to my uncle about it when he lost my aunt to cancer. He said, people are there for the funeral and maybe a couple dishes for you to eat afterwards, and then silence, people just go back to their regular lives. And we were like, there's such this huge gap of like, where can we ask for help? And then where can we continue to get support down the line? So the continued journey through the Breakup Registry, I will be asking people, what they're breaking up. It could be a job loss, it could be a change of cities, anything that feels like a minute trauma, but really it impacts people heavily. And then they can set their own goals, and people can be reminded of that. So even if it's 6 months later, they can get a notification, oh, your friend just reached this goal after experiencing this, reward them with something. So it's kind of making it more of a journey process. So that's part of the relaunch, but we're just really focused on making sure people feel that sustained level of help and connection and community care.
And sorry, you mentioned relaunch. Why a relaunch? Why restarting this?
We're rebuilding the platform to just encompass more than just breakups and divorces.
Oh, okay.
So, like I said,
so
job loss.
all negatives. Yeah. So if you're in a negative situation in life,
become a widow, you lost a job, you changed a city. There's already stuff for babies and celebrations and graduations and things like that. But the only thing you have to go to for traumas is like GoFundMe, and that's usually if it's for like catastrophic car crash, unexpected illnesses. Yeah. But there's nothing for these other things that seem small, that aren't, miscarriages, things like that, where people are struggling.
But they are big things.
They're huge.
And they're things that stay with us for a long time.
They impact families greatly and relationships. And so the string of resources, the types of connection and stuff that we're building is much more vast now. So we really see it as a platform that's going to help a lot of people. And, we're just doing the work.
So when you're striving to help others and you're doing the work, what's in it for you when you're doing that? What is the comeback to you, Natasha?
For me, it's always about then leaving some sort of legacy and impact. I think as an artist, you can get really tied up in what is my legacy going to be as a comedian, and that's great. There's so many comedians with amazing legacies, but that's a piece of what people remember you for. There's more to be done here than I felt that my art could reach. And it's not even me trying to leave a legacy for myself there. It's just like, how can we positively impact more people? And some of the greatest minds I listen to, they've found the best success in their life to be a reflection of how many more people they're able to impact. So, the trickle out, I don't know what that'll be for my own life, but
maybe we'll never know.
Yeah, maybe not. But, the more we can do to help some people, my art gets to be a part of that. That's where I get to share my experience. But the rest of it, people have so many other things that they're going through. I hope to just be able to leave something behind that, has changed people's lives and made them feel like they had the support system they needed.
I think if you keep being true to yourself the way that you're being at the moment, if you keep following this path, I think it's inevitable that you're going to.
Yeah.
That you're going to make a change, that you're going to connect with people, and you're going to widen the conversation and make things happen. And you've mentioned positive for the positive.
Yeah.
And
it helps people feel more vulnerable with their stories. The amount of things people will just come up and share with me. They'll share like their financial status. They'll share their emotional traumas. They'll share their concerns, their worries. This has been happening my whole life, where people on the streets even will just start a conversation with me and tell me really intimate details about their life. And I think my comedy, I get to use my stuff, but the other stuff people tell me, I'm like, well, that's something they trust me with. That's not my story to tell. But at least it informs me on how to continue to build, stuff that I'm working on to help that,
So how do you keep that informed message? How do you keep it striving towards the positive?
Well, it's a tough thing. Even when I was doing some of the interviews initially for the relaunch of the company, it got heavy. It was like a couple weeks that I had scheduled a bunch of half-hour interviews, and people were sharing some really dark shit. And I was really impacted by it, because I was like, I just doing extra work myself to be able to not carry that. It's hard when you're empathetic towards people, but everybody got it. Even one of the guys had been through a loss of his wife and the loss of her stepdad at the same time, and kind of lost his whole system of support, but was still finding these moments to laugh with me about stuff. It was in being honest about how the best time he had felt was when his buddy brought over a sixer of beer and they just sat on the stoop and he just cried and talked about it. And, people are willing to share things in such a way where they're like, I see that this is a negative thing in my life, but I also see that I have even one person that cares about me, and that kind of can snowball into, maybe more people care, or maybe more people would benefit from hearing a story like this.
That one person thing is so important. That one person you could make a difference for. I think sometimes our society, we look too much at the big picture or the big numbers. We've got this thing going on with social media where everyone wants to have a big following. But sometimes wouldn't it be nice if just one person was watching and listening?
Right?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you connected with that one person, or just me and you are having this conversation here now, and that's all that matters.
Right.
I like to think, I read this book once, Atomic Habits.
I love Atomic
Yeah,
Habits.
and it's just that 1%. That 1% accumulates.
Yes.
Over a year, you know, you what was the maths? I'm terrible at maths, so I'm not even going to pretend to do it. But it's something like, if you do that over 365 days at 1%, that's like, if you did it over 0%, that's nothing. If you do it over, why am I trying to do maths? It's 3.65.
Yeah.
But basically, it snowballs. It gets larger and larger and larger. And so, if you have an effect with me now, that goes on to the next person and the next person, and then that spreads out. Maybe 2 more, 3 more, and you don't know where it's going to go, do you?
No, even just through little interactions, like I don't know what made me watch. I watch a lot of positive stuff on YouTube, so I guess the algorithm fed me this. But before I came here, there was a near-death experience this woman had, and her story was incredible. But she, you know, was seeing all these things happening in real time while she was, you know, but she was kind of shown this vision of this one time she helped a single mom pay for stuff at the grocery store. She was short a couple bucks and was going to put something back, and she was shown this vision of the impact that had, because that woman then left that store and did something really nice for somebody else, and it just had this like ripple effect. She's like, I wouldn't have even thought about that moment ever again. It was like $3. But like, you know, just these little kind gestures, it kind of makes you think of all the little interactions you have, and like, if you're short with somebody, or if you seem standoffish to somebody, or like get out of my way and breeze by somebody and make them just...
The energy resonates. So if you've got the negativity resonates.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes somewhere, I had a little bit of a road rage incident that actually I noticed 2 other cars were having a problem, and then I had a problem with that car, and then it was like, right, this has got to end with me. I took a moment to be like, I don't want to pass this on.
Yes.
Yeah. And that takes work to do that.
It does.
That's not necessarily easy. But it's so important to recognise that the energy is transferable.
Yeah, it is.
So if we're going with the negative energy will flow. If we're going with the positive, that will flow.
Yeah, and that's even why I don't talk badly about people. I don't talk about people if they're not in the room. These are things you learn over time. Obviously, it wasn't always that way, you know, as a young comic. But I think that's why people feel comfortable sharing stuff with me. So I'm not going to go dish it out, you know, the hot goss or anything. Like I just don't want that in my life. And also why, you know, when I do speak about people, I'm like, how can I find the positive in this? Because I'm not looking to put more negative onto somebody, you know, because it is energetic. Yeah. And, you know, if you talk about somebody in that kind of light, it goes somewhere, you know, even if they're past, it goes somewhere, or it stays on you, you know. So I mean, it's all just it's stuff that we're learning as we get older.
So as you're dealing with this energy and you're moving more and more into the positive, you mentioned briefly there about what you want in life. What is it you want in life moving forward from here?
From the festival? I actually journal about it and read it to myself every morning, because I'm rereading the book Think and Grow Rich, and there's a segment in there where you kind of write out what your intentions are. So I made an intention for this festival, not knowing who I'd meet or where or how, but that I want the things that I'm putting out in this story to be able to create more art. I've always wanted to sell a TV series. If that ends up happening, you know, from some of this content, great. Or if that spurs something else, great. And I also really see an intertwined connectedness with my work with my company, where we want to do more media and more stories getting out there to help people cope. And I see those kind of intertwining really neatly, you know, with media on the Breakup registry side and with media on the comedy and entertainment side. I just kind of see it as a spider web. And I have kind of a laundry list of ideal investors and partners in the company that also are in entertainment as well. And I just have like an impact list of who I think would be great to work with in the future on both sides.
That sounds like a really impactful thing to want. That sounds like a really positive thing to want. And from connecting with you today, watching your comedy show, I feel like you could move forward in that direction if you just keep doing what you're doing. If you just
Yeah.
keep being Natasha, keep being yourself, keep driving this energy forward. But one last question for you then, as we sort of wrap this up.
Sure.
So what advice would you give to someone that is transforming into finding their journey, to finding who they are, how they share what they do? What advice would you give to them to kind of start or to be able to release into that?
You know, I mean, I know obviously, especially with comedy, you know, everybody wants you to come into a comedy club, make a bunch of jokes, and, you know, have a killer set. And yes, you should do that, of course. But also, if you're thinking more big picture, and I wrote about this for Chortle, I think it was, about like how you can view yourself as a business. And the more you start to look at what you're crafting in your art as a business, those kind of business opportunities will come up and it'll kind of snowball into this bubble, this really cool, unique brand. And that's where I think the term brand gets overused and misconstrued. What is my brand? My brand is sassy. Well, okay, but like there's more to it. You know, what makes you, what makes you you, what makes it so that nobody could steal your business idea, nobody could do the same jokes, nobody could have the same impact, write the same script, be the same character, because you've created this kind of mass ball of what clearly is how you operate and function and what you put into the world. And to me, if you think about things like that, like what resonates with you, what feels like your integrity aligns, you know, and surround yourself with people that feel like they have that same kind of through line or that same kind of vision for their own life. You can't help but have these great little bubbles start to mash into each other and find just awesome people to work with, you know? And that is what sustains you when the career gets hard. The people you're surrounded by and the type of people you surround yourself with and the reason you have them around.
The communities that you
100%.
build.
So I think the more you be thoughtful about your own career and how it takes shape, you'll start to just find these amazing communities and people will find you. And I've just noticed that, like my co-founder found me and we talked for months before I offered her the co-founder position, and she was like so overjoyed, and she's been such a huge piece in this process and somebody that I needed to find. And so you just never know who's going to show up at your doorstep just by putting yourself out the way that feels not like somebody else wants to see you, just how you are, you know?
And there was something really important there about shaping it as well, and that shaping it doesn't just happen overnight.
No.
Shaping it takes time.
It does.
You can't rush the process. You can't be like, oh, I'm doing this now. I feel like I'm on the journey. I feel like I found myself. But it's a journey.
Yeah, I listen to David Bayer's podcast a lot. He's one of the, you know, he's a former addict of everything that now does this amazing work and has a book out called A Changed Mind. He was talking about this on the podcast I listened to yesterday. He's like, a sculptor doesn't sculpt by making an arm first and then a torso and then a leg and then sticking them together. You know, it's a big ball that you just kind of whittle stuff away. You start deciding what things you don't need in your life. You start deciding who you don't want to surround yourself with anymore. You start taking things off your plate that don't align. And then you start to just craft this like really lovely thing that you didn't even really know what it was going to turn out like, but it was in the work the whole time.
So much of this is resonating with me, with the journey that I've had from the last year, that this has been that exactly, that I didn't know what this was when I started.
Yeah.
And I'm beginning to, a year into it, I'm beginning to feel what the shape of this looks like. And at times, I've been worried about time and you know, we live in this world where finances are a thing, you know, but we do have to consider that as well, because that's the energy that helps this thing move forward. But no, I asked you for advice for others, but then I'm like, I'm taking that.
Yeah.
That means a lot to me. That I need to keep feeling this thing and keep molding this into
It'll shape
something.
into something. I mean, and that's not even fully my advice. You know, a lot of the advice that I carry out to other people is something that somebody else went through this journey And I've then, taken on that information and made it
So
my
you've
own.
taken the energy and transferred that into here.
But that's
and then
the impact. That's the impact of somebody who went through something terrible, changed everything about their life, and is now doing good, and it's now affecting me positively. And I get to put that into my thoughts and my creations and like how I write my, it's all about that, positive, it is a changing of your mind and like, continuously creation or continuously creating. And it all just kind of fuels this amazing engine where you can trust that you're just going and you're going to get there, removes a lot of the stress.
Well, thank you so much, Natasha. It's been really, really nice to meet you.
So nice
I really
to meet you.
appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And if anyone has been watching or listening, we appreciate you for joining us for this conversation. But if anyone wants to find out more about you, where do they find you? I'm
heavily on Instagram. I'm at NPH Comedy. My website is nphcomedy.com, and that has information on my company, my last special, mini specials I've done, my tours, everything. I'm touring through Europe after this, so I'll be starting in London, going all the way through to Barcelona. And yeah, I'm just all over the place all the time.
Thank you. I'm going to come and seek you out again. I'm going to make sure I see you.
I would love that. Absolutely.
I really do appreciate it.
Likewise.
Thanks again.
This is wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.